I'd like to call this meeting of the Clay County Commission to order. We will begin this evening's meeting with our invocation. This evening we have Rabbi Carroll with us. Rabbi, if you would come forward and please lead us in prayer.
I'm Rabbi Larry Carroll. I am retired to the area, believe it or not, having moved from New Mexico. Sorry, I am Rabbi Larry Carroll, retired in the area, having moved from New Mexico, but I grew up south of the river, so it's good to be back here in the area for 2 years so far. Member of the Temple Congregation B'nai Yehuda, near 123rd and Knoll right now. Eternal One, Creator and Sustainer of us all, we thank you for this opportunity to engage in the work of serving the citizens of this county and community. It is you, Compassionate One, to whom we turn when we consider laws and policies that will govern the lives of the people whom we serve, members of every generation. It is you, Guide and Teacher, who grants us knowledge and insight to discern the meanings and implications of proposals and budgets that require consideration so that all decisions will reflect wise leadership. It is you, the true judge, who sharpens our sense of justice in order to promote both order and fairness. It is you, merciful and patient one, who gives us the ability to speak to one another with respect and consideration, where expressions of personal convictions will engender cooperation and mutual understanding. It is you, guardian and protector, who will grant us safety wherever we are. And we pray that you, the caring presence in our lives, will give us hope that the work we do here makes a positive impact on the lives of the citizens of this county. Sovereign of our days, we humbly seek your blessing so that we may continue to be a blessing to one another. And we say, Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte?
Here.
Commissioner Withington?
Here.
Commissioner Lawson?
Here.
Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here. That brings us to approval of this evening's agenda. Is there a motion related to the agenda for this evening? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion's been made to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
That brings us to the public comments portion of our agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on any items of interest? Seeing none. That brings us to our consent agenda. Administrator?
The consent agenda allows the Commission to act upon items considered to be routine and approved in one motion. These may include items that have been reviewed by the Commission in a prior session. There will be no separate discussion unless a Commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. There are 2 items on the consent agenda this evening. Resolution 2023-274 is approving invoice payments from the period of August the 12th through August 23rd. There are 543 invoices being paid for a total amount of $1,800,058.61. And then we have Resolution 2023-280 is approving a revocable event license with the Liberty Chamber of Commerce for the 46th Annual Liberty Fall Festival.
Is there a motion related to this evening's consent agenda? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Motion been made for the passage of the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
That brings us to our regular agenda. First item on this evening's regular agenda is 2023-275. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-275 is approving invoice payments for the Clay County Prosecutor's Office from August the 12th to August the 18th, 2023. There are 4 invoices totaling the amount of $633.79.
Is there a motion on 2023-275? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve 2023-275.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2023-275. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
I recuse myself.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 recusal.
The next item on our regular agenda is 2023-277. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-277 is approving a cooperative agreement between the Clay County Sheriff's Office and the Ray County Sheriff's Office to transfer 2 vehicles and installed emergency equipment. Captain Agdarian is here to provide information to the Commission.
Please proceed, Captain.
Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office. Good evening, Commission. This is a request by the Sheriff's Office to donate 2 vehicles from our fleet to the Ray County Sheriff's Office for use in their operations. These are, I believe the years are 2013, I think. It's 2 Ford Taurus vehicles that are older models in our fleet. And it's an agreement that we have with Ray County because Ray County has absorbed the Cyber Crimes Task Force after it was redistributed due to just the size and the workload for the state. So Ray County had a need for these vehicles. Rather than sell them at auction, we are seeking to donate them for use in their operations.
Okay, very good. I'm sure they are appreciative of that, and we've, of course, got good relations with our neighbor to the east. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion on 2023-276? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve 2023-277.
Did I say?
That's the next
I'm
one.
sorry, you're right, 277. I'm a little bit ahead of the game. Motion's been made on 2023-277. Discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, now we are ready for 2023-276 and 279, which I believe are companion issues.
Resolution 2023-276 is a consideration of a term and supply contract with Vance Brothers for the county's chip and seal program. And there are extenuating circumstances, so we have also added as a companion resolution, Resolution 2023-279, in consideration of approving a short-term lease agreement and emergency purchase with GW Van Keppel Company. And we have our highway administrator here to provide information about both of these items for the Commission's consideration.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Commissioners. Terry Griffin, Highway Administrator. In June, you may remember that we presented a program to the Commission for our road resurfacing and preservation for the calendar year 2023. It included microseal preservation, asphalt overlay, and chip seal resurfacing throughout the county. The microseal preservation and the asphalt resurfacing should be completed by contractors in the next 6 to 8 weeks. But our plan also included using Highway Department staff and equipment for the chip seal resurfacing of 37 miles. Throughout the spring and summer months, weather has been an extreme challenge for us. I'm sure you all remember the various torrential downpours that we've had over the months. And 1 day of rain for the Highway Department frequently translates to 2 or 3 days delay because we have to wait for the roads or the base surface to dry out before we can continue whatever process we're in. As we move towards fall, it's also important to note that the cooler temperatures begin to create problems for chip seal. The general rules for chip seal are that ambient air temperature should be at least 60 degrees and rising, pavement temperature should be 70 degrees and rising, or the chip seal does not perform adequately. Curing is inadequate frequently if the temperatures fall below 50 degrees during a 24-hour period following placement of the surface. And as fall approaches, we expect to see cooler days and possibly more rainfall, simply because the fall is a rainier time than summer typically. So throughout May and June, when we were prepping roads for chip seal, heavy storms caused multiple day delays totaling about 2.5 weeks. In July, we began actual resurfacing, but again, we had torrential downpours, and because of those delays, we are now close to a month behind our planned scheduling for chip seal resurfacing. So to date, the department has actually completed 10 miles out of the 37 that we had planned to complete. When it became apparent that because of the delays, the department was unlikely to be able to complete the planned chip seal, we chose to issue a term and supply bid for what's called bituminous asphalt or bituminous surface treatment, which we commonly call chip seal. That advertisement included 11 of the 27 remaining miles to be done, and we plan to have the contractor do 11 miles and for the highway department to finish the remaining 16 miles. With that bid, Vance Brothers provided the lowest and best bid response and met all specifications. On August 3rd, while we were chip sealing, the chip spreader, which is the primary piece of equipment that does the chip sealing work, lost power and would no longer move either forward or backwards. The dealer service technician visited the site that day and said that the speed sensor was out. The sensor was ordered and delivered and installed on August 8th. The dealer tech was there again, but this chip spreader still had no power. The diagnosis at that time was that there was low pressure in the charge pump, and the tech also identified that there were metal shards within the system. Now, the charge pump is the primary source for all the power that is supplied to the various motors and pumps within the chip sealer. So the chip spreader was loaded on a trailer and taken to the dealer shop for further analysis and for repair. On Monday of this week, the dealer finally inspected the unit because we had to wait for our turn in line for them to get our unit in, and they determined that the main pump needed to be rebuilt. They've sent that out for repair, and it's expected to take about 4 weeks to repair that pump. After the pump is repaired, they will reinstall the pump, check the system again, and determine if there is any additional damage that has occurred or if whatever else needs to be done. So we're still kind of up in the air as to how long the chip spreader will be down and how much it will cost to repair. With the chip spreader out of service, it will be impossible for the highway department to finish any more chip sealing resurfacing. We've looked at options to complete not just the 11 miles that we put on the bid, but also the additional 16 miles which the highway department planned to finish. We've considered several options, and I have a couple to present to you this evening as possibilities. One option is for Vance Brothers, the successful bidder on the contract, to complete the additional chip seal surfacing beyond the original 11 miles to complete the other 16. We contacted Vance and asked them if they could do that, and they told us that they were willing to take on the additional miles, but cautioned that fall weather may prevent them from completing those additional miles. They currently plan to begin work on county chip sealing in late September, so they're well into fall before they can get to our chip sealing. We compared the cost for Vance Brothers to chip seal any road that they do. Their cost is $2.95 per square yard. For the 10 miles that the highway department has already completed, our cost is typically $2.41 per square yard. So whether the highway department completes the bid or completes the chip sealing at a lower cost, or whether Vance completes it at a higher cost, we still have money in the budget for chip seal, and we believe that our budget is adequate to cover either option that we have. So that's the first option, for Vance to complete additional miles. A second option is for Vance to complete only the 11 miles that were included on the term and supply bid, and for the highway department to rent a chip sealer or chip spreader unit, and for our staff to continue resurfacing the remaining 16 miles. We contacted several companies who sell chip spreaders to ask if they have any rental units, and GW Van Keppel was the only company that rents any units. The cost to rent the unit will be $38,000. The unit can be delivered in 7 to 10 days from the time we place the order, and we believe that the Highway Department can finish chip sealing 16 miles of road before the cooler weather arrives. If this option is approved, the rental cost will be paid from the Highway Department equipment budget, and we will adjust other equipment purchases as needed to stay within budget. The Commission has very clearly communicated to us that they feel that maintaining and improving county roads is an important part of what we should be doing. We agree. We know county residents expect high-quality roads and expect them to be maintained well. With all these things in mind, our recommendation is that we continue the contract with Vance Brothers to complete 11 miles of chip seal resurfacing and then rent the chip spreader for the Highway Department to finish the remaining 16 miles of chip seal. Therefore, we're asking for your approval of these two resolutions tonight. 2023-276 is a term and supply contract for chip seal resurfacing with Vance Brothers, and Resolution 2023-279 is the rental of the chip spreader from G.W. Van Keppel. If you have questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Lawson, I believe you're seeking recognition.
Thank you. The only thing I wondered, how old is that chip spreader?
It's
That's- The one that's not working? How old?
It's 5 years old.
5 years old? What kind of warranty did it have?
It's out of warranty at this point.
Oh, darn it, of course.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
course. So the guys that sold it to you, that are repairing it, are the ones that will allow us to use one, right? Are they going to do it, or are we going to do it using their equipment?
We will do all of the work. We'll
Okay.
just rent their equipment and use their equipment.
Yeah, since we purchased that from them, I think they'd give us a little bit better deal than that, you know?
Well, we'll start on that track with them and see how far we get.
I'm sorry?
We will work on that with them and see how far we get with that. But yes, we're still, since we don't know what's wrong with it at this point, it's impossible for us to say how expensive it's going to be.
And how, I couldn't quite hear what you said when you said, how long would it be before they would be able to have that back to us, the defective one?
We don't know.
You know,
Well, it will take close to a month for them to rebuild the pump that we know is damaged at this point.
Okay.
And then after that, they'll put that pump back in, check the system out again, and let us know what else, if anything, needs to be done and how much longer it may take.
yeah, I'd tell them, when we get ready to buy another one, unless you give us a heck of a deal, we'll look elsewhere. But yeah, well, I feel your pain, and that's probably the biggest complaint, you know, of everybody calling is my road, my road, my road. So I know it's important, we got to do it, so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Withington.
What is the average life of this kind of equipment? You said we've only had this one for 5 years.
We would expect the life expectancy to be 3 to 4 times what it is at this point. Now, we would expect to make repairs throughout that time, so it's difficult to say.
How often does this get maintained? Did we miss any maintenance that caused it to only have a 5-year lifespan?
No.
No,
We've
okay.
been maintaining it.
And so looking at your guys' website here, it looks like you for excuse me, chip and seal, looks like we've only completed 11 of 55 roads. And you said we have 16 miles left for the county to do and 11 for, what's their name, Van Brothers?
11 for my Vance.
So is that 11 plus 16, the other 44 roads on this list for chip seal?
The roads that are listed are not all a mile long. The total mileage for the roads that are listed on the
Yeah,
website.
so that's what I'm asking, is if that total miles, the 16 and 11, these 44
Yes.
other roads, so all that will be done?
Yes.
Also, for microsurfacing, the website has 0 roads complete. When are we going to start on those?
The contractor, which is Vance Brothers, has told us that they will be here sometime in September,
Okay, and asphalt has 0 roads complete. When will those get done?
also in September.
September. So if we approve both 276 and 279, you are saying that we will have all asphalt, micro seal, or microsurfacing and chip and seal done this year? That's on this list?
That's the plan.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And that is, of course, weather permitting. Not just for us, but for the contractors as well. But it should work. It should.
When does micro sealing
when it gets cold. Or wet. No, it's like chip seal. The air temperature needs to be roughly 60 degrees and rising, and the pavement needs to be 70 degrees and rising.
So
Or
when-
more or less. The temperatures can vary a little bit. We started in May. And we were a little bit late starting this year, yes.
Because we promised our citizens that we were going to make this investment into roads, and, I would hate to have to go back to them now and tell them that the highway department started late and it's not going to get done.
So would we. We'd hate for
Yeah.
you to have to do that. We really do intend to get it done. We've had delays, as I mentioned, the weather delays have been a problem, and our staffing levels are so low that that's contributed to the slowness of our getting
Are we
work
doing
done.
anything to address the staffing levels?
Pardon me?
Are we doing anything to address this? Because it seems like that's been something you guys have mentioned even before I took office with staffing levels. So it's been almost a year now. What are we doing to address those staffing levels?
We continue to place advertisements, use word of mouth. We're on various, the county website, various social media, various employment, online employment websites and so forth. We rewrite ads for the operator positions on a regular basis and repost them so that they are new ads again, even though it's the same position.
Have we offered overtime to the existing employees to try to get some of these projects done?
We have not at this point, but that is the next possibility when we get the chip spreader in.
Okay, thanks.
If I could, I'd also add, with regard to trying to recruit, we've also done some adjustments to the job descriptions with regard to requirements for different positions to try and expand, getting some that are sort of less
Expand the applicant
certification.
pool, yes.
To expand the applicant pool to get staffing. So we continue to explore all different avenues to try and recruit to fill those vacancies.
And I would say if you have further suggestions, we would love to have them.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Just a brief question, Terry, and thanks for your presentation. As I'm looking at the funding overview, the contract for Vance would be for about $410,000, and the budgeted amount is listed as $990,000. And I think my question is how best to read this. Is it to suggest that there is still roughly $580,000 available in this line item for other repairs through the rest of the year, like the asphalt and other things that our colleague asked about? Or, well, why don't I stop there? When I say that, am I reading that properly?
Yes, I believe the total budget for chip seal was $990,000 this year. And as you said, the Vance contract is $409, I believe.
Yeah. So
And
the remainder of that budget is still there, and that gets exhausted either through,
that will be used for the county chip seal expenses.
okay. So yet to come, and it's going to be spent by the rest of the year.
It's still going to be spent, absolutely.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Does the county only own one chip spreader?
Yes.
And do you know off the top of your head roughly how much a new one would cost?
The one that we're renting has a purchase price of about $450,000.
450? Okay, and then lastly, are your crews working, have they been working this week during this heat?
Yes, they have been.
Outside?
They've worked a standard 40-hour shift this week in the heat, yes.
Well, tell them we appreciate what they do.
Thank you.
And we're very thankful for what they do.
Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion related to these two items? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve 2023-276 and 2023-279.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2023-276 and 2023-279. Any further discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Withington,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
That brings us to the next item on this evening's agenda, 2023 Ordinance 19. Administrator?
2023 Ordinance 19 is a consideration of approving an Airport Rescue State Block Grant Agreement with the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission for the airport, and Acting Airport Manager Davis is here to provide information.
Please proceed.
John Davis, Acting Airport Manager. Basically, you have an approval in front of you for the Airport Rescue State Block Grant. MoDOT is proposing to release to us $59,000 in COVID or CARES Act funds for expenses we've incurred for combating COVID-19. It can be used for operational expenses, salaries, janitorial services, cleaning supplies, etc. We're still researching what we're going to use the funds for as of right now, but basically needing approval.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion on this, on ordinance 19? Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. Move to approve 2023 Ordinance 19.
Motion has been made for approval of 2023 ordinance 19. Any further discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Withington,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
That brings us to item 2023-278. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-278 is the consideration of approving ARPA funding for the Kansas City Trap Shooters Association cleanup with our Parks Department. This was a discussion item that was presented to the commission at last week's meeting, and Director Driscoll is here to provide information and answer any questions that the commission may have.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Commissioners. This resolution asks for funding for the excavation, hauling, and landfill fees from the Kansas City Trap Association. This is basically a cleanup of clay pigeons and shot shell wads from the area, and we have been directed by the Corps of Engineers to effect this cleanup. We had commissioned a study, and it was by Burns & McDonnell, and they basically did the analysis, sent it in. The analysis was approved for landfill, so we worked through all of that and got it ready to go. We may have to redo the analysis by the time we start hauling if we get funding to do so. At that time, it was estimated 12,600 tons of material, and the estimate was at that time for about $600,000, and this was in like 2019. So with this resolution, we ask for approval for funding to begin this cleanup.
Comments or questions? Commissioner Withington?
You said that there was an analysis done. Is there an environmental study? Has anybody done an environmental study that says that this needs to be done?
Basically, the Corps of Engineers directed us to do it, and this analysis was done, sent to them and to us and to landfill. And at that time, they deemed it necessary to remove.
So, but they haven't done an environmental study that says that there is an environmental impact?
Not that I'm aware of. They'd have proceeded again in their latest environmental inspection for us to try to get removal of the clay pigeons prior to any groundwater contamination.
So groundwater, I thought that the lake got its water from the Little Platte River. I didn't think there was any groundwater that fed into the lake or anything. What groundwater are we talking about?
I would just assume runoff and seepage from the area.
Okay, and the clay pigeons aren't biodegradable?
Pardon me?
The clay pigeons aren't biodegradable?
No. I don't know the exact composition.
Could you speak a little bit more into the microphone so we can all hear? Thank you.
Hey, sorry.
That's
Get
okay.
closer so I can hear you.
I got you.
I don't know the composition exactly, but these are not the totally biodegradable. And of course, there is plastic shot shell wads mostly used in today's shells that probably will be there for a long time. That's, I am not.
So have we pushed
Scientists.
back on the Corps and asked them if this is actually an issue or if this is just somebody saying that they think we need to do this?
According to them, it is an issue and it needs to be done.
But they haven't given us anything that says that this is an issue. They've just come by and said, this is an issue. I would like to see the Parks Department, this is a lot of money, and I remember last week you said that it was probably gonna cost an extra $400,000 on top of this. I would like to see the commission ask staff to push back on the Corps of Engineers and ask for an official study or something, or official report that says this is actually an issue before we spend this money. I mean, this is a lot of money.
Yes, sir.
And it's been like this, my understanding, for 30 years, and it's never been a problem before. So, yeah, I would like to see what the other commissioners think, but I would like to see us push back and get some kind of analysis from the Corps that says this is actual an environmental issue before we do anything.
If I could, and I'm not disagreeing with the commissioner's consideration, but I do want to clarify, we do actually have in writing. This isn't just they walked by and said, this needs to be cleaned up, please clean it up. So it is actually been in several of our inspections by the Corps. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no, and I understand that, and I think the whole commission should maybe have access to that to see what that. So I would like to hold off on this until we can get something from the Corps, or you can, an official analysis from the Corps that shows, because my understanding that this clay pigeons are made out of some similar things as we put into the roads. I talked to a person that used to work for the Trap Shooters Association. So if these clay pigeons are an environmental impact, does that mean we're gonna have to go rip up all of our roads that run by the lake also? If they're have some of the similar, components in them. So I would like to see an official report, and maybe anything you have. I think that should have been given to this whole commission probably before this when we had this discussion to begin with, but that's where I'm at. I would like to see some more official stuff before we proceed with this.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, and thanks, Mike. I know I wasn't here last week for the discussions you had, but I did watch it all. I streamed it all and threw some stuff at my computer screen while I was watching it. Pretty frustrated about this on a number of levels. First of all, I don't know why there's any reason why they would not be using biodegradable clay pigeons. I shoot trap on my own property, and I use biodegradable clay pigeons, which biodegrade. We're talking close to maybe potentially $1 million here, which, by the way, is at least 2 chip spreaders for the highway department. And to have to spend this on just picking up dirt and hauling it off, it really frustrates me on a number of levels. My first question is this an actual toxic issue, or is it just a pile of junk that needs to be moved? Notice, and just kind of follow up on what Jason was saying, is there toxic readings in the soil that they've read that is causing them concern, or are they seeing, hey, this is a pile of junk, you need to get out of here? Do you know?
I don't believe that they found it toxic, but they found it to be a solid waste that needed to be removed. And,
So it's a pile of garbage that needs to get moved out of there.
Yes.
If I'm reading this right, it's about 12,000 tons. I was telling Diana earlier that I have a 1-ton truck. I'll fill that up 12 times for you. And that would come out to about $83,000 each time I filled it up. I'll do that at that price, I'll tell you that. This seems astronomical.
Yes.
They're gonna do 12 truckloads of my truck, and a dump truck would be a lot less than 12. Then you're gonna almost 600,000 here, but it could be up to $1 million to haul that away. How many estimates do we get on this, and is there any other option for that?
we had our general contractor bring up one of their excavator hauler companies, and their estimate to remove that much material to the landfill, not paying the landfill fees, but just to excavate and haul, was $628,000.
Wait, so this is not including paying the landfills fees?
Did not include landfill fees.
This is just to pick up the dirt?
Yes, that was their estimate.
Heck no. Wow, that's crazy to me.
Yes.
And so they're actually going to remove all this dirt, or are they going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Are they going to mine it just for, just sift it basically?
No, it's just a scoop up. and
Scoop it all up,
load
put it in the
and-
truck and go.
Yes.
12,000 tons of it.
They did make provisions for repairing any sidewalk or road damage.
And the
But
dumping
other than that,
fees-
That's basically all it was.
And the dumping fees are on top of that we would pay?
Yes, that is, at our agreement with the landfill from 3 years ago, it was about $35 a ton.
$35 a ton.
And for that amount.
So 35 times,
That's $440,000.
so that puts us over
Just for landfill.
440,000, is that what you said?
Yes,
For the dumping fees.
yes,
So that puts us at over $1 million then.
yes.
But that's not included in here.
Not in the hauling estimate.
Yeah, okay, so I think a lot more work needs to be done on this for a number of reasons. Some that have already been mentioned. The other is the responsibility on this. I find it, so I've run a couple of shooting ranges myself in my prior life. And I just think it's crazy that this is just, all this waste has just been put out there and left out there, and now it's going to take over $1 million for the county to clean it up. I know there's some discussion about what the contract says. I would hope that maybe we can push this off a little bit and let all the commission actually see the contract of what that said as far as responsibilities for this. I think that would be helpful as well. But this just isn't making a whole lot of sense to me, and the numbers just don't sound good to me. And maybe that we're stuck with this, I don't know, but I would like a little bit more information on that. So when they dump this isn't considered hazardous waste that they're dumping, right?
No,
It's not. They're just dumping dirt
just waste, solid waste. that
for
needs to be removed.
$400,000.
Yes.
I mean, you could dump it in my backyard for half that, if you want to do that. But yeah, this is just crazy. This is crazy to me. So I would suggest, and I know some other people that want to talk, I would suggest that we put this off to get a little more information, but that's my suggestion.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Well, to bury the headline, I tend to agree with my colleagues about delay. But there's a couple other things I'll say to that. Well, one is, you have an issue that's been raised by the Corps since 2017. I doubt the issue itself will just go away. So I tend to think that action will have to be taken sooner rather than later. I bring that up as well because I feel like, and I think we have talked from time to time, that at some point the lease that we have from the Army Corps of Engineers comes up. And I would hate for them to say, you know what, you don't get Smithfield Lake because you turned it into a dump. So I do think in the long term, for that long-term issue, there is an action that needs to be taken. I tend to agree that seems like a lot of money, and frankly, when I have some issues at my house, I know now where to take my junk, so thank you, Commissioner. Well, hopefully it's not this fee, but all kidding aside, I think we've already established that $600,000 is not going to solve the problem. So the question becomes, can you get that number down to take on more? Or do you have some plan or some thinking, and we, that is, have a plan to actually execute the entire issue? If 600,000 isn't going to cut it, well, still half of a junk pile is still half of a junk pile, and the Corps is going to wonder when you're going to clean that up. So I feel like we need to be a little bit more certain as to if we've got to clean it up, how are we really going to clean it up? But lastly, there's also, frankly, the issue of once you clean it up, how do you make sure it doesn't come back? And my primary reason for wanting to delay is to have an understanding of the responsibility of ongoing cleanup. And, I hate to say it this way, so pardon me, but, well, because you've had the history. And if KCTA is not going to take responsibility in the future, I got a real problem with cleaning up the mess and then acting like everyone can just go about their day. And I tend to think that before we agree to take some level of action, there must be some assurance to us as to what our subleasee is going to do. And absent that, I still got to clean it up, but that then gets into some other actions that, we don't need to get into tonight. But we have a lease with this organization, as I understand it. They have responsibilities. Those responsibilities are outlined. If that includes cleaning up after themselves, and before I clean this mess up, I want to know that they'll actually do what the lease says, if that is indeed what the lease obligates them to do. So there's a lot of stuff there. I'll kind of leave it at that. And Mike, I appreciate your follow-up on this issue. Thank you very much.
I have had that discussion with a couple of the manager and the secretary of the board, just a meeting up there. Generally going through this whole kind of process and then telling that we have to have a plan going forward. If we clean this up, there'll have to be an annual or a biannual cleanup affected. And no, I don't have anything specific or in writing, but that could be affected fairly easily. And it wouldn't be a problem, probably each year to clean up what's there.
Sure.
But the responsibility and the cost and stuff does need to be directed and spelled out so there's no problem in the future.
Right. Well, I appreciate those comments. And if I may, a thought that strikes me is, you're not going to necessarily reopen the lease on this, but perhaps there's an MOU, some sort of memorandum of understanding that tells us here are the obligations that you are going to go through. If it is an annual cleanup, fine, but something, at least for me, I feel like there's got to be something in writing that says, we understand this, some action needs to be taken, this is what the county is going to do, this is what KCTA is going to do, so that it is very clear what those obligations and expectations are. Just my thought, to whatever extent those can be helpful. Thank you.
Certainly, the county could enter into and amend the current lease to address that so that there's a clear understanding of obligations.
However
That's an
that can
opportunity.
be written out, I think, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioner Lawson.
I'm in total agreement. I think this is a massive charge, whether I shoot up there or I don't shoot up there. I have to worry about the budget, which I said I would be fiscally responsible, and so consequently I will be. I do agree, it's way too much money. I would like to see a couple of things. Number one, I'd like for all of the commissioners to have the opportunity to have a copy of the contract between the county and the KCTA. I think that's paramount, that they all have one of those. I'd like everybody to get that study such as it was to that point. I will tell everyone that I had a brief conversation with the current president, and this is a totally new administration. And I have to say that they are much more responsible than what we've had in the past. One of the things this gentleman immediately said was, once this is all cleaned up, they will absolutely go to biodegradable targets. They used to use those. And then this other administration came in and they started using the others because they were cheaper. And they did that for 20-some years, I guess. And now this gentleman says they will go back and they will use the biodegradable, and that way that'll alleviate this problem completely. There's another thing that he referred to, it's that for those that don't shoot, it's not just the targets, but it's the wads, right? And they're the little plastic thing that's inside the cartridge, and that gets dropped there. So somehow, I don't know what their level of concern is over that, but that needs to be addressed as well. And we have a gentleman who does the reclamation for us up there for the lead. And when they told him what the cost was to do this, he was shocked. He said that just seems like it's way out of line. So I would like to see alternative options, maybe a different company come in and give us a bid, maybe two or so. And then that way, that would put everybody's mind to rest that, this is what it, I think one of the biggest things is the cost at the landfill per ton that they have to pay?
Yeah.
Or,
It basically is an estimate from the landfill that's going to end in like 2
Yeah.
months. And we would have to redo the analysis and the landfill would update their costs. So
yeah,
I don't anticipate it would be any less, that's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that this has gone on for this long and that it wasn't addressed earlier than it's been addressed. So I'm in total agreement with everybody that, one of the things, I'll say this and then I'll shut up. I think this is a huge sum, but I also have said this before. You've got marinas that we have to maintain. People keep their boats there and they pay for it and all, but I would have to say that the money that's given from those slips doesn't sustain the maintenance of all of the docks. So we pour money into those docks. I mean, we could say, well, the hell with the Kansas City Trap Association. Well, let's say the hell with the marinas. Let's say the hell with the golf course that isn't probably pulling its own weight, and we have to subsidize that as well. This is another service that we give to the people of the county, where that range up there is unbelievably good to the youth. They have huge shoots. Over 300 kids come at one time and shoot. People come up there and have benefit shoots for the different organizations. So it's not like, they're just self-serving. So while I agree 1,000%, I think let's don't make them look like the bad guy, because there's plenty of other stuff in this county. A good example will be the restaurant that we've got sitting up there. What did the county pay for that? $775,000? Somewhere between $575 and $775. We put into that restaurant, built the restaurant, completely put all the equipment in, let the people have the lease. After a year, they walked away, scot-free. We didn't hold their feet to the fire and make them do anything. Now we've got another decent group that has come in there. We'll never recover that $775 that we put out there. So let's don't make this sound like these guys are a bunch of schlucks, because they're responsible people. Nobody has said a damn thing to them for 35 years about this thing until a few years ago. Now it's reared its ugly head. We got to get it taken care of, but I think we can get better bids and try to get that down, to where it should be. And let everybody see what the lease is like, and let them see what we have had thus far for the environmental. But, and that way, maybe we need to do something a little bit more on that vein. So we know this is really something that is imperative that it be done. But from this point forward, once it's cleaned, they will go with the biodegradable. So thank you very much. I appreciate what you do up there. It's not an easy job.
Commissioner Withington.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we put this on hold until we get more information.
Could you hold off on the motion until we have all commissioners speak who wish to comment on the issue,
Okay.
and then I'll recognize you for that
All right.
motion? Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you. First of all, I agree that we should put it on hold for a number of reasons. One is just I think we should try to get to the bottom of this question of, do we in fact have to clean it up? Commissioner Wagner mentioned that that's an important question to raise last week, and I agree, and Commissioner Withington brought that up tonight. And part of that is, I think if there is a legitimate environmental concern, then we ought to, remediate that. But if this is just sort of a request that doesn't have to be, that isn't a mandate, and also that doesn't accompany an actual legitimate environmental concern, then I think we have a decision to make as to whether or not to invest these funds at all. I would also like to totally second the idea that, you know, we get it in writing that we're going to have a different protocol going forward for this. It sounds like the sublease, you know, as it exists, you know, as we discussed on this last week, says that solid waste removal is up to the leasee, which
Yes.
occurs to me that that would be KCTA, but I also understand that at this point, they probably don't have access to the funds to do that, should it be a mandate. So, you know, that may be that we simply have to. But I think first thing to get to the bottom of is what extent there is an actual environmental concern here, and whether or not we have any latitude as to whether or not to expend these funds. And then one other thing I'd point out is you mentioned that the $600,000 didn't include the landfill fees. And, you know, this may or may not be the most accurate description of it, but what we have in front of us in our packet suggests that it does, or at least that the 2019 Burns and Mack report put it at about $600,000. And it says here anyway, that would include the landfill fees for what that's worth. Now, as we discussed last week, that was 2019, you know, here we are 4 years later, and by the time we get to it, it might be 5 years. So, you know, I assume the price will have gone up in any event. And so it'll be a big amount regardless. But I think taking a little more time makes sense. Doesn't seem like it's been an emergency up to this point, given that we got our first notice on it back in 2017. So I reckon we can do another week or two before we force a decision.
I had a couple of questions. One is, what is our position as far as any appeal to the Army Corps as far as our lease agreement goes? And I don't expect, you know, that answer to be right at this moment, but when we take this up again, I think I would like to know what recourse we would have in these kind of disputes with the Army Corps, and make sure that we have that firmly in mind. Like I say, it may well have been already explored, but I would like to hear a little bit more about that. I think also, when is the lease up with the KCTA, by the way? Does anybody have that?
December 31st, 2029.
Okay, so that's a few years off. I do think it is, as Commissioner Wagner had mentioned, I do think it's an awfully good idea to get, at a minimum, a memorandum of understanding, if not a rewrite of the lease. But I think we do need to visit that back again and make sure that while I'm sure the people who are running it now are good folks, but still, it is nice to have the clarity of the written word in these kinds of matters, I believe. Also, these are estimates from Burns and Mack, I guess, or whoever. We are going to get like competitive bids on this, or is that available to us?
I'm sorry.
Competitive bids on this work?
We went through the Wilson Group just to get an estimate, an updated estimate from when Burns and McDonald did their study. It came back, of course, twice as high as what it would have been 4 years ago. But that was just working to them. That was the only estimate I have at this time. So it could be put out for more competitive.
If I could, Commissioner.
Yes.
Again, remember, what we're here tonight, whether you table or whatever, is really just authorizing the ARPA funding of $600,000. Then it would be through a bidding process and our normal process to go out and get quotes and vendors and to find the best cost that we can do to do this particular work. So none of that is available. We just have estimates and
Okay.
prior estimates when this was all discussed a couple of years ago, and then, you know, we've kind of factored in inflation. So
The other thing is, and I agree with what's been mentioned with some of the other commissioners, and that is, I had understood it would be about $1 million, and the $600,000, I thought, okay, that sounded a bit low, but when you figure that they did not include the landfill costs, that was, yeah, to pay the landfill approximately. They did, you're right, they did. But I would like to see in that the entire amount be, you know, if it's going to cost us more than $600,000, we need to make sure that the request is that we don't have to come back later on and revisit it if we can. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
but then that means we'll need to try and find additional funding. I mean, the intent of this was $600,000 that was allocated in the ARPA funding budget, and while I know they said it's not tipping fees are in there, but basically what this would be is we would do as much as we can with $600,000, right?
Oh, I see. So you'd be coming back for another request to,
Right, but if it's the commission, and I understand you want more information and more time,
Yeah.
but if you want to go to the avenue of, well, we agree we should clean it up, but we want to do it all at once, then we will need to find additional funding to do it all at once. This was to take the advantage of lump sum money that we had available to do as much of it as we could, and then, throughout our budgeting process, continue to address, any aspect of the debris that we couldn't take care of in the 600,000.
I would like to kind of get the full price, what it's going to cost us regardless of where the funding comes from. It's still going to come from county funds. So I think we need to know that. Commissioner Wagner, and then if there's no one else, I believe Commissioner Withington was going to seek recognition to make a motion. So Commissioner Wagner,
Thank
then I'll
you.
go to Commissioner Withington.
Thank you. The thought struck me, knowing our colleague was going to make the motion. I guess my question, Administrator, is I think part of what I'm hearing, and hopefully I say this and there's agreement to it, is understanding some updates or having updates of bids to be able to know what we are looking at today. And I guess my question is, if we were to table, can you still get bids? Or if not, could I then suggest to my colleague to amend his motion to ask you to go get those bids? I think everyone wants the bids and everyone wants to see what's the dollar amount, what does it take to do the whole thing. I want to make sure that we leave this subject knowing that we're not ready to do this, but that we are getting the information that we need. Does that make sense?
Right, and so there are two ways to make that happen. One is you could proceed to authorize, and now all you're doing is really saying, we're moving from, sort of unencumbered, pledged 600,000 of ARPA money to this project. Now we have a project with a budget, and we can go out and do the formal bidding process. We can also work with procurement, because I never like to go to a formal bidding process if we don't have funding allocated for it. Because, for bidders to respond to our proposals, it takes time. And we certainly then don't want to say, thank you very much, but we don't have any money and we're not going to do it. So to do a formal bid process, I always like to have money in the project to do. But we can work with purchasing to see how can we basically go out and get solicitations for, proposals to do it and then bring that back. So there's two different ways that we can make that happen for
And
you.
under the first assumption, wherever that goes, and if that does end up with a suggested bidder, you will come back here anyway with that. Okay. Well, as our colleague is looking to make a motion, I'm going to let him take what I just asked and do with it what he will. So.
If there are no other questions or comments, I will be recognizing Commissioner Withington. I see none, so Commissioner, you are recognized.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we hold 2023 Ordinance 19 for a month until we can get more detailed bids. Is that what you were saying?
It's actually a resolution 2023-278.
Okay, yeah, my bad. I'd like to make a motion that we hold 2023-278 for 1 month
A month?
until we get, you said more different bids? Is that what
Always
it is?
bring it back if we don't.
I think based on what we said, where he's going with that, the proper term would be to
Table.
table.
Okay.
To get the bids.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we table 2023-278 for a month until we get bids and the commission has time to review the current lease for the KCTA. And also, we are able to possibly see any documentation that the Corps has provided you and maybe an environmental study or whatever they're basing their facts off of.
Right. And for clarification, what we will provide to the commission is all correspondence from 2017 that we have to today for you, from the Corps and from our leasee.
Okay, so that's my motion.
Does the clerk have the motion? I don't want to repeat the entire motion, but you feel comfortable with, you've got the text of what the commissioner has just requested, made the motion for? Yes. Okay. And the administrator, I'm sure, feels adequately instructed. Therefore, motion has been made to table 2023-278 for 1 month along the lines proposed by Commissioner Withington, being a motion to table. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Oh, now it's me. Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, that brings us to our next issue. That's the 2023 Ordinance 20. Administrator?
2023 Ordinance 20 is establishing a procedure to disclose potential conflicts of interest and substantial interest for certain officials. With the commission's indulgence, just for information, this is what I would consider a housekeeping ordinance. This is an ordinance that comes before the commission on an annual basis. This is in compliance with the Missouri Ethics Commission. This is the exact ordinance that we have in place right now. However, we have to commission has to look at it annually, and we have to resubmit it to the Missouri Ethics Commission every year. And the current ordinance with the commission, Ethics Commission, expires in September, so this next month, in a few weeks. So happy to answer any questions, but again, the ordinance is not changed from the ordinance that we currently have in place.
And I might add one additional element there. By doing this, you all get to do a much more abbreviated and shorter financial disclosure than you would if this is not in place.
Very well. Are there any questions or comments before I seek a motion? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2023 Ordinance 21? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve 2023.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, yeah, 20. Yeah, I gave you the wrong number. I jumped ahead again. Go ahead.
Ordinance 20. I was on it. There you go.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry. I scrolled ahead once we've started the motion thing. A motion has been made for the approval of 2023 Ordinance 20. No further discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Our final issue on tonight's regular agenda is 2023 Ordinance 21. Administrator?
2023 Ordinance 21 is calling for an election in Clay County for the purpose of submitting to the voters of Clay County the question of implementing a monthly fee on subscribers to communication services for the purposes of funding emergency 911 services. This item has been discussed with the commission over several meetings over the past several months, specifically in detail at last week's meeting under the discussion. As the commission may recall, this is putting before the voters at the November 2023 election for the consideration of putting in place a monthly service device fee, and the amount that the commission has in the ordinance is $1 per month per device that has the ability to connect to 911, either by calling or by texting.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Counselor, I think you talked about this before, but the language that's in this, Proposition A, it looks like, where did that come from?
So if you look at, you're talking about the ballot language?
Yeah,
So the ballot language has 3 sentences.
Right.
The first sentence, which is ends in a question mark, that is specifically from the statute, verbatim. We're changing, identifying the county and all that. The last two, I think are appropriate to include. They certainly don't have to be included. The last sentence, we typically always include to let the voters know that we will be retaining oversight of these funds. And I think it's important that the voters understand that this will replace an existing fee.
Yes.
But that sentence doesn't have to be there. Just
My
understand
concern
that.
is the first sentence. Is the first sentence, we're required to have it that way?
That is, yes, that is verbatim from the statute. The only differences or the only flexibility on that language would be, obviously, we have to identify, the statute doesn't identify the county, so we have to put that in. But the main one would be the dollar. You know, it's inserted in there, that's the most it can be. We have to put a number in there, and the direction I got was to go with the dollar.
So my question or I guess my issue is, it says impose a monthly fee. I really, and I don't know if we can do this, but my concern is that, or my desire is that we make it what it is, and that is a transfer of that fee from the landline to the cell phones. As if you're to read the first sentence, which a lot of people just read the first sentence and say this is another monthly fee that we're adding to it, you clarify it, you cleaned up a little bit in the next couple of sentences, but if there's a way to change that from impose a monthly fee to transfer the fees from the landline to the cell phone, and then the dollar amount, that kind of thing. I don't know if that's possible, but you follow what I'm saying, where I'm trying to go with this?
I am, but I will tell you that opening sentence really is directly from the statute.
Okay, so
And the
then-
statute really says substantially in this form. I'm trying to pull up the statute real quick while I'm saying that, but I believe that.
I just want it to make it look like we're not trying to create new fees here, but we're really just transferring the fees that exist, to some degree, transferring the fees that existed on the landline to the cell phones, because we're missing out on those now. But if you tell me that can't happen in the first sentence, then, oh well.
So let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay.
And I think that that's the reason the second sentence is in there.
Right.
Because if we can't change the first, because of coming from statute, we did want to clarify for the citizens that this is actually replacing, an existing 911 service on landlines. And so should this pass, then that would be rescinded and go away.
So let me read from the statute and track with what the language is. The question submitted shall be in substantially the following form. Quote, shall, insert name of county, impose a monthly fee of, insert amount, on a subscriber of any communications service that has been enabled to contact 911 for the purpose of funding 911 service in the county.
Okay, so impose a monthly fee, that's required, okay. So then my next
I would
question.
prefer not to test that.
Right.
That's what the
No,
statute says.
I'm fine with that. And then, so the next sentence says, if passed, this fee shall replace the county's current fee for 911 services assessed on landlines. Could we say that if passed, this fee shall replace and remove the county's current fee for 911 services assessed on landline telephones?
I think
I guess
as
I'm
long
gonna make
as long
that
as we are
decision.
truthful in that next sentence, I'm very comfortable with whatever changes you might want to make.
I like the idea of saying it's removed, so people understand we're removing that fee from the, I just want to make it as simple as possible so people understand, hey, we're taking this off the landline and transferring it over to the cell phone. And that's just my opinion. I don't know others. We got 6 more up here that might have a different opinion, but that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Commissioner, are you wanting to make an amendment to that effect? I mean, you can certainly after further discussion, but to change that would require us to amend the ordinance. So,
I'd be happy to wait and see how the discussion goes.
Okay. I just want to make sure you had the option, or aware of it. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Kind of following along those lines, I note that this language does not currently show the current fee. And I don't know if it is consistent, but to our colleagues' earlier comment, it seems to me if, for the sake of argument, if the current fee is $1, then that further reinforces that this is just a swap as opposed to something new.
It's a percentage.
I think it's a percentage.
It's a percentage.
Okay.
And so, I think that might make things more confusing.
Yeah, no, I would agree
I was
with
trying to
that.
simplify it as much as I could. I think
get it.
shorter ballot language is better for citizens, but.
No, I totally agree, and there's no need to complicate that. I don't have a landline, so I don't know that there's a percentage anymore. I haven't had one in years, so there you go. My second question, the other question, is actually for the sheriff, since he was wise enough to come here today. As we've discussed here previously, this will take an effort to educate the public as to the reasons for doing this and the advantage of doing it. And I guess since you're here, Sheriff, I kind of wanted to get your 2 cents as to the reason to do it and how, if one can say, the Sheriff's Department can help educate the public on these issues.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sheriff Will Aiken. I'm extremely concerned with the language, especially on something like this. Not to say that council didn't do a great job on it, but if it's in there and it doesn't describe in length exactly what we're doing, it's going to take an extreme campaign to educate people why we need to have this done. Everyone's benefiting right now who don't have landlines. That bill was actually passed in 1993, and back then it made sense to pay for 911 services. But when we had this bill change and everything kind of flip-flopped, until now, we never had this discussion. But as you very well know, we're paying, the last I heard, it's probably significantly more now, $800,000 out of general fund?
Actually, this year is closer to $1 million.
There you go. Last time I was directly involved in it was $600,000 a year, and that was about 6 years ago. So it's gone up exponentially. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to continue to have to pay for 911 services out of general fund as opposed to utilize this mechanism to get money to support 911 services. And it's not just 911 services that we're talking about right now. We're talking about next gen 911. There's so much more happening as far as the capabilities of 911, but the problem is every time you improve 911, it comes with a dollar sign. And as a KC metro area where 911 is everywhere in our region, I think it's 47 PSAPs, when someone wants it, we all pay for it. If we don't have the funding mechanism in place to support that increase in cost, then we're going to continue to have to pay it out of general fund. Now keep in mind, and I think I've said this in previous meetings, it's Clay County's responsibility to pay for our amount for 911 services. The municipalities don't pay. That was back in 1993 and nothing has changed. So Clay County is responsible for that. So it will always come out of our coffers, not the municipalities.
Right.
Now, if we are successful and this bill passes, that money will be in excess of what we need for just 911 services, but it's not extra money. Right. We are suffering from the lack of dispatchers that we have in Clay County, in my dispatch center right now. But we're not alone. I think, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Nolte, and I, we visited KCPD's dispatch center. I think they were at 50% capacity for staffing. This is unfortunately, it's a national issue, not just us. But in order if this mechanism succeeds, then it'll be able to, from what I understand, go towards salaries as well. And we can come up with a better salary structure for dispatchers. Now, the great news with legislation this session, they made it to where dispatchers are now considered first responders. So they're in a completely different category as opposed to the way it used to be, and they were just considered secretaries. They work shift work, they deal with critical incidents. The only downside for them is they don't have closure. And that's where we lose our dispatchers. They're taking shooting calls, they're taking domestic violence calls, but they're stuck behind a console and they don't get that closure, whereas those of us who respond to those calls for service, we get that closure because either they end up in handcuffs or we catch someone and they go to jail. They don't get that. So that first responder piece is critical for them because now we get to treat them as first responders.
Sure.
So going back to the mechanism and the language, yeah, that scares me. We're going to have a fantastic campaign to educate the citizens of Clay County in order for this to
Yeah,
get
because
passed.
what you just described, I think would require 5 ballots to actually put all of that in there, so the.
Unfortunately, so
yeah.
we're gonna have to come up with a campaign, and and I have no problem being a part of that campaign. Just like we did with the law enforcement sales tax. We put together a campaign, a strong campaign, and made it happen with 6 weeks' notice.
Right.
And it passed. So fortunately, Clay County does support the sheriff's office and law enforcement in general. So I think we do have that on our side, but we can't waste any time. And if this is what we have to work with, then so be it. We'll make it work.
Well, I guess my question to get to probably what is most useful for the county council and administrator is, if you could fit one more sentence in there, what would it say?
Not enough.
Then I think we're probably good with what we got.
To council's point, I mean, if you have shorter ballot language, the easier it is to have people vote on it. Because if you put too much in there, then it's convoluted. They don't understand it. If you throw percentages in there and numbers, they're not going to the polls to do math. Right. They're going there to vote on it. But my concern is this is going to be considered a tax. I remember when this was going to before legislation, and they kept calling it a cell phone tax, and oh my gosh, it was met with tremendous opposition.
Yeah, that's why it took so long.
Yeah. So, if this, like I said, if this is what we have to work with, then we'll put together a campaign and we'll push it and we'll educate the citizens and let them know that this is for emergency services through telecommunications.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
If I could just add a little bit to the sheriff's comments about how the funding, as you all recall from last week. So yes, the first is our commitment to regional 911 costs, which we've been subsidizing because our dedicated revenue has continued to go down. We're also factoring in dispatching, and we're also factoring in from an annual budget to set aside and create a 911 communications sort of sinking fund. Because as Sheriff Aiken mentioned, technology is becoming greater and greater and helps us in first responding, but there is a price tag that goes with all that equipment that makes it happen. So we're also wanting to establish a fund so that when that new technology comes, Clay County is prepared and we have those funds available to implement that new technology along with the rest of the region.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you, Commissioner. First of all, I had the same thought as Commissioner Johnson on that second sentence about, I was going to suggest replace and eliminate, but replace and remove, whatever. I do think adding a little extra clarity there makes sense. And then I was going to suggest on the last sentence, I think maybe something to the sheriff's point, which is instead of just sort of generically saying annually appropriate, sort of spelling out that we're going to appropriate specifically for the purpose of improving 911 service or something to that effect. So that it really, because the way it reads right now is almost sort of makes it look like the commission can just sort of do whatever we want with it. Whereas I think clarifying that we're going to specifically utilize it for that purpose, which is I think a thing people want. They want good 911 service. Makes sense to me. I agree. I have some concern about whether or not this thing will, definitely pass, and I think we ought to try to make sure it does pass on the first go-round, as opposed to having it fail and then, contemplating trying again on the same issue. And I think, Sheriff Aiken, you're going to play a pretty big role in helping to get that done. And so, what you said to the commission tonight, I appreciate your honest feedback in terms of the language here. But I'll be honest with you, I feel very strongly that we should not move this forward tonight unless we have language that you're comfortable with. Because I think you're going to play a central role in getting this thing across. And the last thing I want to do is approve this tonight with language that you're not comfortable with, and then it goes to the ballot and fails. And then it's kind of an I told you so moment. I don't want that. So if you have specific suggestions, I'd like us to do our very best to incorporate this.
And you and I are right on par with the concern of the ballot language. But again, I think what we have here is probably good enough. The only thing that I think I would be able to recommend is put something in there that says this is replacing an old mechanism specifically for 911 communications. And then just leave it at that. Because the campaign that we can put together is one of education, but it can be, hey, this is the reason why we're doing it. And we can push it out on our social media. We have a tremendous reach on social media. We have a tremendous network that we can go through all the chambers of commerce, the Rotary clubs, all the different groups that are within. But then also, it really is the education piece. But, I guess my concern is twofold. One, it's going to be considered a tax, and no one wants to increase taxes. But if we can put in there that it's replacing an old mechanism, I think we'll be okay. But it's also timing. Fortunately, and I don't mean to bring something up, but it has very much a relevance to this, and that is the Royals issue. If we would have put this up at the same time, it would have failed, because you're putting too many taxes before. That's just my personal opinion. And, I know Facebook isn't the tell-all of how ballots are going to go, but there's a tremendous amount of opposition right now that we can see. And if you add another tax on there, then it's gonna cause problems. Now, that's not an issue for us this year. So if we are able to get it on the November ballot, I think we would be successful.
Yeah, I share that concern, and actually, we talked about it last week. Now, it kind of goes both ways, right? Which is that either can impact the other. And you're right that it doesn't look like they're going to be at the same time, but they will be pretty close in proximity, and there is going to probably be quite a lot of active sort of discussion and reporting on at least the one, even during the time of this election. So I threw that out last week in terms of trying to, because I'm fine with doing this November. I also think if we're going to do it, we ought to try to make sure it passes. And so in terms of the other tax increase, I agree. People only have so much, appetite for seeing their taxes go up. And to your point about, clarifying that we're eliminating the landline with, some extra verbiage, I think that does make sense. That being said, a pretty small, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's well under half now, right, of folks even have landlines. Most people, like me, only have a cell phone, and so when I see on the ballot language that I'm going to start paying a tax on my cell phone, which, again, I support, I think we should do it makes a lot of sense, and it, reassures me that they're eliminating my landline fee. Well, I don't pay a landline fee, and most people don't, so I'm not sure that is going to be, in fact, you may even get some folks who are kind of like, well, that that benefits other people and not me. I don't. Sometimes people get a little selfish like that. So, but yeah, I want to make sure we use language here that you're comfortable with. And if you feel like a different, if you don't feel like November is the right decision, it sounds like you are comfortable with November. But if for some reason you think delaying it till next year, I just feel like you are going to play a central role in getting this passed. I feel like getting it passed is the correct goal to have on this. And so I want us to get as close to your request here as we can, as long as it's still within the law of what ballot language can say.
If it pleases the commission, if I could have just a little bit of time with county council to work through this, and not that I'm questioning him, but I just want to understand the reason why, because there's a lot more to it that's outside of my scope of work, right? But the thing that I'm grateful for is we have more than 6 weeks to work on this. And I think if I could have just
They have to decide on the ballot tonight.
Oh.
Yeah,
to get it on November.
I'm glad you brought that up, Administrator, because after they were finished.
Okay, thank you. Let us run with it.
But the ballot language has to be done tonight,
Yeah.
if we're going to do November.
That was the thing I wanted to. Thank you for jumping in there. But yeah, what I wanted to point out was, and mainly because a lot of us already know that here around this particular dais, but that is that for the benefit of those members of the public who are observing these proceedings, I would not want them to think that we were proceeding with undue haste, but we are under deadline, and our next scheduled meeting would be after the deadline for the November ballot.
That's right.
So I just wanted to say that so that those observing would understand that if we move with some speed, it is with reason. So I just want to make sure that that was made clear.
Okay, so then just to add, that was purely from my curiosity, from my understanding. But if council's come up with this, I trust our county council. He's never led us astray. And if that's what we have to go with, then I would recommend the county commission to approve this.
So, thank you. So what about my suggestion of on that last sentence, at least adding some words that clarify when it's shall annually appropriate, adding some words in there about shall annually appropriate for the purpose of improving 911 services in Clay County, something to that effect, or would you have a different?
So I've got maybe two suggestions. There are three sentences currently. The second sentence says shall replace the current. If we say shall remove and replace, I think that would be fine, and that was a suggestion I heard earlier. I would be comfortable with that. And then what if we added a new third sentence? So we have, between the second and third, we add a new sentence that would become the third sentence that says something like, the proceeds of this fee shall be deposited in the county's 911 fund and not commingled with the general funds of the county and shall be expended solely for the purpose of 911 service, period.
Yeah.
And then go to the last sentence about auditing.
And can we say the word improving 911 service, or is that?
Improving?
Well, you said for the purpose of 911 service at the end of
Yes.
that sentence. I just feel like folks want 911 service to be as good as possible, and probably a lot of them want it to be improved. And I feel like if we're telling them we're going to improve their 911 service with this text, they may.
And of course, with ballot language, we always want to be factual
Right,
and
that's what I'm asking,
never trying to be persuasive and in a way that feels like this is advocacy. So we want to be very careful about the language. And I don't know would this technically be expanded 911 service?
I don't think it would be expanding, but
Yeah.
it would certainly set us up for improvements, to your point. Because, I mean, we're never going to go back. We're always going to go forward. It's just where do we take the money in order to pay for going forward? And so I think I am really on board with what council just presented, because it's removing and, I'm sorry, how did you say that again? Removing and replacing.
the
That is great.
current. Yep.
And then it's for 911, so in our education campaign, we can say, hey, this is what's happening. And we can put it in flyers. Now, of course, as you may very well know, I can't say which direction to go in anything that I print from the Clay County Sheriff's Office. However, when I go and talk, as an elected official, I can tell them this is the reason why we need it. And I will be extremely active educating with that campaign.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate the time, Commissioner, and as long as our sheriff is on board with the language, then I am too, and look forward to voting yes on it.
Before we go any further, I know that there is contemplated a number of amendments, and I want to make sure that we are proceeding as we need to, so I want to get some advice from council. Obviously, I want to avoid the prohibition on amending previously amended materials. Does it seem like a good way for us to go is to continue to have this discussion and work through this and then end up with one amendment that would include, if possible, all of the changes? That way we kind of get them all done in one, they're all in context kind of, you see
Yeah,
what I mean?
I think where we're heading is, I hope, is that the current language can be amended in one motion, and then I can make sure it gets reduced to writing and signed tonight.
Now, yeah, good. So I think we're thinking along the same lines. I didn't want to entertain multiple motions for an amendment, and it seemed cleaner just to include them in one kind of generally agreed to amendment, and then we would work from there. The other thing is, I'm not sure how much of this language is going to be changed and how much. Would it be advisable for us to, depending on how complicated the language gets, go ahead and get it written out, and because it's not a very long passage, and maybe have it printed out and copied so that we could all have written copies of it in front of us? We can maybe stand down for a couple of minutes while it's gone through a...
I would suggest we go on to the one of your discussion topics, and I'll get this language done.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and let's work through and get that, the proposed amendment put together, and then we can come back to that?
Yeah.
If that
Yeah.
would work. Yeah, whatever, but the thing is, I wanted to make sure that all commissioners were able to see it in writing rather than hear it and then try to kind of, go from there. So if we could do something where it's before the commission in written form, I think that would be,
Yep.
more
I mean, I'm happy to go
instructive.
do that right now if you guys want to, again, move on to your first discussion topic, and I'll work on it.
There's more people I think that have something to put on what you put down.
That's what I was going to say, was I think, the thing is, you've got that much right now, but I think there are further modifications, and if some of them impinge on what you've got right now, maybe if, for instance, if Commissioner Johnson has a suggestion, perhaps that would modify what we have right now. So I think if we discuss it as all amendments at one time, we can craft them so they work together and aren't kind of implemented that way. So right now I've got 3 commissioners seeking recognition. So you've got that language. Let's go ahead and get any other recommendations for amendments. Write them all down in one copy, and then we can see it as a consolidated list. So with that, Commissioner Lawson, you are the next to seek recognition.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is, think about the little old lady that comes up to vote or something like that. When you start your legalese of commingle and all that kind of stuff, I think that I'd just like to see something very concise that speaks to for the purpose of, and then improving, not going back and, let's see, just a minute. The county commission shall annually appropriate said funds pursuant to law. Now, maybe something like that has to be in there, but I'd rather say this: the Clay County Commission shall annually, I don't know how, but then say something about for the purpose of improving 911 or upgrading or improving 911.
I think county councilor will put in the one about a dedicated, we're not, I get commingling might not be the word to use, but in essence, I think we want to send the message that it's going to a separate fund
To 911,
for 911.
that's it. Yeah.
But I think the last sentence, I understand what you're saying, and you're right, it is a little legalese. So how do we put part of that last sentence in what I would consider plain language? But I do think it's important to put in there to our public that these funds are subject to annually be audited.
Yes,
right?
that
And
you
so
should, yes, I
think
agree. Yeah.
I understand what he's wanting to do, but again, it's legal language, and how do we put that in plain language?
Yeah.
Right.
Some
We could just say-
normal, plain language, and then just say it's for 911 shall be audited annually. And I think that, and then the word that
What's
Jay
everyone's feeling
wanted
about
to change.
appropriation?
Pardon, sir?
About the use of the word appropriate? I mean, we could just say the Clay County Commission shall
Yeah.
annually appropriate and audit these funds.
Yeah.
That's
But
it.
I'd somehow put in there that it's improving 911. I think that's real important, that people realize it's for the purpose of
Well, the improving,
upgrading, improving.
the word
whatever.
improve is a reasonably
Yeah.
subjective word and gets close to the line, I think, because we don't know that that's actually what's happening.
We know it's going to get improved. I
Well,
mean,
again-
that's just a every month thing, every week thing practically with 911. They're constantly improving it.
With 911, because of the system, or the way that our system is set up in the KC metro area, improvements aren't really improvements like every day, month. It's
No.
sometimes 3 years down the road when a piece of equipment is designed, and then all of a sudden we have to pay $100,000 for 3 plugins. Really summarizing it. That's the improvements that we're talking about.
Yeah.
The improvements with Next Gen 911 will, once we get there, will allow you to send pictures to dispatch. Right now, you can't do that.
Yeah.
All we can do right now is text to 911, and quite frankly, a lot of people don't even know that. And that's been out for almost 8 years now. So Next Gen 911 will also be able to tell where you're at, where your phone is located, but also altitude.
Great.
So if you're in a 20-story building, we don't know what floor you're on right now. So Next Gen 911 will tell us where you're at exactly, but also exactly which floor based off of where your phone is located.
Those are
And
improvements, right?
Those are improvements, but
Yeah.
those are years worth of improvements. But
Yeah, I know.
at some point, it's going to cost so much money. And again,
Then
going
is
back to where's the money coming from?
upgrade a better word to use versus improve?
I
Or
have to
say,
see it. I
maybe
have to
we
see
just
it
say
to-
it shall be
to
used
envision
for
it.
911 and make sure that they understand. I just want people to understand it's all going there, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever verbiage we want to use that isn't all legaled up, that's what I like to see. Plain everyday English.
This, sorry, instead of the last sentence, and instead of the sentence that I suggested, what if the new sentence, the third sentence, which would be the last sentence, says only this: the proceeds of this fee shall be used exclusively for 911 service and audited annually by the county.
Okay,
Is it?
okay, Commissioner Johnson? Oh, I'm sorry, hold on.
Don't muddy the waters.
They're getting
There we
muddied.
go.
They're getting muddied right now. First of all, this language is due on what date?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. So the language has to be included with us passing
It
this.
does. The notice of election, which is the last document,
The other
is what
question,
calls
how
it.
many other counties have already done this? Do we know?
I only know of Jackson because I did some research on Jackson, but I do believe other counties have done it.
I thought we were one of the last ones to do it.
What's that?
I thought we were one of the last ones to get it done. Okay. Anyway, so I was jotting down what I thought would make good sentences. It might jive with yours. I'll just read mine off, and I have them written down here, so you don't have to write them down again if you don't want. But the first sentence obviously has to say the same. My second sentence is, if passed, the current 911 fees assessed on landline telephones will be removed, period. The next sentence is, these funds will be used solely for the use of our emergency 911 system, such as computer technology and the cost of hiring dispatchers, and will be audited annually. Period. That's it. So that's one more kind of variation to add to it. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. but-
Can you say that last part, the last sentence
The
again?
last sentence is, these funds will be used solely for the use of our emergency 911 system, such as computer technology and the cost of hiring dispatchers, and will be audited annually.
With just some very minor tweaks, I would be fine with that. We probably wouldn't use the word "our," to be honest. We would use the counties or something of that nature.
Wait, our? Oh, our, okay, the emergency 911, yeah, okay, got it.
So I have curiosity, without putting et cetera in there, would we be limiting ourselves to just those two areas? even
Okay,
though it says
I put such as, not
Okay.
limited
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
And I don't think we'd be limited to that.
Yeah.
What's important, the key is that you're saying solely. I used the word exclusively, you said solely, same concept.
Yeah.
For 911 service.
So, yeah, I was just trying to dumb it down, make it easy for people. If I might suggest is maybe if you're going to go back and work on this, maybe you and the sheriff and maybe even one of the commissioners go back and put a
Is
finished
everybody
product
okay
together.
generally with Commissioner Johnson's language? How about we put that out there with just a minor tweak on a word or two and bring it back to you?
So they're going to go back and create a draft ballot language for you while we go on to the next discussion item. And when it's done, we will post it up here.
We have one more commissioner wishing to be recognized.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, and when that happens. And also, just Commissioner Johnson, to answer your question about how many counties in Missouri have done a device fee for 911, there are 9,
9?
only 9.
Okay. Thank you.
Need to go ahead and hit the button again. Got knocked off. There you go.
No,
Commissioner
thank you.
Wagner.
Thank you. I'll defer. I think what I was going to offer compared to what has been offered is fine. Go with that. Appreciate it.
Okay, before we send the
I don't know if you can read that.
counselor off, any other comments before we close? We're not really closing, we are just, what would be the good word for me to use? Make sure we can revisit this, just leave it open?
Yeah, just leave it open while
Okay.
we move on, yeah.
Okay, great. With that, we will move to discussion items. First item under discussion is ARPA funding request for marine pump outs at Smithville Lake, and that is from Parks.
Thank you, Commissioners. As one of our encumbered funds, ARPA funds that have been set aside in the ARPA budget, there are funds that have been allocated for the marina pumps out, and it falls under and is utilized under ARPA for COVID, because as we know, during COVID, certainly outdoor activities and our parks and our campgrounds and our marinas saw a huge increase in activities and services and wear and tear on equipment. And so what we have in the ARPA budget is some funding, approximately $60,000 for this project, and Director Driscoll is here to provide information to the commission about the project.
Please proceed. I don't control his mic. Oh, I see.
Thank you. Mike Driscoll, Park Director. We are looking with this discussion to again ask for funds from ARPA for the allocation of funds for the improvement of our marine pump out stations. We have two such units that have been in operation for quite a while. One was recently withdrawn because it would not continue to work. But basically, as marina owners, operators on Smithfield Lake, we are obligated to have a marine pump out, and we would hopefully provide these units for the boating public to responsibly discharge of waste from their vessels. In Sailboat Cove, we have one pump out unit on a small dock, mostly used by sailboats, but other vessels can also come in and use it. The other one was at Paradise Point Marina, Little Platte Marina. It was removed 2018, I believe, because we just couldn't keep it working. And it was on the bait house dock, which was kind of tight and difficult for the bigger boats to use. So what we are looking forward to with this discussion is to probably upgrade our facilities at Paradise Point with a new pump out. And at Sailboat Cove, we would like to put in a new pump, which is replacing one that was first installed in 2009. We'd like to put a walkway to the dock so our staff could service the dock and the pump out more easily. And like I said, at Paradise Point Marina, the dock was the bait house dock, and it was sitting right there on the north end of the building. A little tight spot, hard for big boats to get into. So we would relocate a pump out to the end of one of the other docks to make it more accessible for large boats. We have estimates for cost for pump outs, two pumps from one of the leading corporations in marine pump outs. We estimate another, substantial price for a new walkway, but in all told, it would be about $60,000 at our estimate to accomplish these upgrades. And this is a discussion, basically, not near as expensive as a KCTA, but still very necessary as part of our operations at Smithfield Lake.
I'm assuming that there would be some sort of a secure gate to get out on that walkway in a
Yes,
similar way that there are to others.
Yes, sir. We have gates on all the walkways, for each marina, each section. Well, we would also have a lock gate there for the walkway out to the pump out at Sailboat Cove, yes.
And has the I've heard some complaints, some comment on it. Has the pumping system as it exists now been a subject of some problems? And have we had problems with the current pump
Yes.
system?
Well, I don't know the exact number of calls we've had this summer, but probably average one a week where for some reason or another, the boater can't get it to work. It may have lost prime, whatever. We have instructions there at the pump, but I'd say maybe once a week, not always, but we have to go up and either get it reprimed or figure out what's wrong with it. Usually it's something that we can get back to going pretty easy, but we're looking at a new design pump and of course 15 years newer to replace that one with. The operation works okay, but we do have problems from time to time.
Are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Mike, if you answered this, I apologize for missing it. Lifespan of these pumps, and if you were to purchase and replace, what would be their lifespan?
Their lifespan?
Yeah, of the
At
equipment.
least 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
These are top-of-the-line units, basically from the ones we looked at and estimated costs are from the #1 marine pump out. So they all have a 3 to 5 year warranty on parts, I think. Expected, yes, 15 to 20 years easily.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? I'm assuming that what the administrator is seeking is guidance on going forward with this. I don't know that there's just basically consensus from the commission that, yes, we want to go forward with this.
Well, correct. So what would happen is on your next agenda, if you direct us to, we will come back and it will be a resolution basically authorizing ARPA funds. And then we go through, as I said earlier, on these projects, we'll go through our normal bidding process and it will come back to you to award those contracts and those purchases. And so we'll follow that normal process. This is just an extra step that we normally do because, again, it's ARPA funding and not necessarily a budgeted item.
Very good. So is it, do we have consensus from the commission to go forward on this? I'm seeing head nods all the way around, so we're good to go. I was kind of tap dancing there a little bit. I thought if the counselor was coming back in a moment or two, I didn't want to start on another discussion item, which I don't know the length of it's going to be. If he's going to come back, it would be good to, it'd be my preference to resolve the issue of ordinance 21 while it's still fresh in our minds, rather than go to another, what could be an extensive discussion item. So I'm kind of trying to work my way around that a little bit.
Well, and I was just going to announce that this will, we could certainly, I just was going to announce for the public, this will be on your next week's agenda with regard to a resolution authorizing this ARPA funding.
Okay, with that, we will stand at ease for 5 minutes until we have our language back. And then when we get back, we will resume with ordinance 21 and then go to our next discussion item upon completion of that. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're returning from standing at ease. We will now return to the subject of 2023 Ordinance 21, which is ballot language that is being considered. I believe that language has been distributed to all commissioners in writing. With that, let's open it up for discussion with the idea of having a motion on the floor to amend the ordinance after some discussion. So with that, who would like to open up the discussion on the proposed language? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that our colleague and the county council and the sheriff have done. I'm perfectly happy to make a motion regarding an amendment with what we have here.
Is there any further discussion before we move on to a motion to amend? Seeing none, you are recognized.
Thank you. I move to amend 2023 Ordinance 21 with the language that has been provided by the county councilor under the ballot language under Proposition A.
Motion has been made to amend 2023 Ordinance 21 by substituting the new language for the ballot language that has been submitted. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Withington,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
amendment passes 6-0.
That brings, there we go. That brings us back to the underlying bill. So now we will be looking at 2023 Ordinance 21 as amended. Any further discussion? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve 2023 Ordinance 21 as amended.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2023 Ordinance 21 as amended. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Withington,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
motion passes 6-0.
A second.
Yes.
Once this is signed tonight and then finalized and certified by the clerk, then typically what happens is the clerk will then hand deliver it down to the election board. I assume that'll be tomorrow, and it'll be ready to go on the ballot.
Which will put us a few days ahead of
will.
the absolute deadline. Very good. That concludes our regular agenda for this evening. We will return to discussion items. Discussion item number 1 has already been discussed. That brings us to discussion item number 2, 2024 Clay County Economic Development Council Service Agreement. Administrator?
This item was requested for discussion purposes by Commissioner Withington. We are getting ready and in the preparations for the 2024 budget. And as you know, as part of that budget, we do receive applications from our outside agencies. And I believe Commissioner Withington wanted to have some discussion as we begin the budget process.
Very good. As it is your item, Commissioner Withington, we will begin with you. If you could go ahead and push your button. There we are. You're recognized.
Okay, yeah, Administrator Diana, she pretty much summed it up. I know we're getting ready to start the budget process, and this body has discussed numerous times what our desire is. I just want to make sure that the budget team has a clear directive from the consensus of this commission when they seek out the outside agency funding request, that for the Economic Development Council, that it's communicated to them that this body would like to have a say in who is our representative on the executive committee. I know that would take a bylaw change, but we've discussed that. So this way that they will have 4 or 5 months to prepare for that, and it shouldn't take them until, I can't remember, we approved it in June or July of this year. So yeah, that way I hope they will know what our expectations are going into their funding requests, so.
Just for clarification purposes, before you take off your microphone, are you basically wanting to, the discussion would be that it would be along the lines that were proposed last year? This would be no, you're talking about what was proposed last, or excuse me, earlier this year, not last year. I'm thinking budget years now. So it's pretty much the same
Yeah, so
parameters.
it's different than what you proposed. Your proposal was to add a second seat to the board. We don't want to add a second seat. We want to keep the structure the same. It's just instead of the bylaws, saying that it's automatically the presiding, we wanted to say that this board will, it could still be the presiding. We just want this board to have a say in who our executive board members.
If I could recap just to make sure for clarification. So the proposition is that we would remain at one member on the executive board, but that member would be chosen by the commission.
Yeah,
Okay.
no change to the overall structure. We just wanted to have this board have a say in who the executive board member is.
Okay, very well. Commissioner Lawson, you are recognized.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I got to thinking after I looked at this, we're going to be meeting with them next week. Do you feel that that might be something that we sit down face to face with them and maybe propose that option so that there could be open discussion?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I think they know this is coming. I mean, we've communicated it to them, so I think they're aware that this is what we're gonna go for, so.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawson kind of took my thunder on that one, so I will just suggest that the value, I think, of that is to not only present that, which gives them time to either look at that or come up with other options, but there's plenty of time, because I think at the end of the day, as we've discussed this, there's two issues that I think we want addressed. One is communication with this body as far as what is going on at the EDC, and the other is to convey to the EDC what our wishes are moving forward. So whether that is what has been suggested by our colleague, or in throwing it out there are alternatives they wish to present, next week seems to be a good opportunity to do that. And since I believe Commissioner Lawson is with me next week in that strategic planning discussion, she is welcome to steal my thunder there as well, but just wanted to make those points. Thank you.
Further clarification, how does this affect the current arrangement with 3 commissioners on general board? Or would that alter that in any way?
No, we're talking solely the executive board.
So it would not, the change would not be at the expense of the 3 members on general board?
No, I think we keep the seat, I think we're gonna just, we don't wanna change the physical count of how many board members we have. So it wouldn't impact any of that. It's just we want to have a say in who represents us. And again, I would like to see that if we pick a Western person on the executive board, that we only have 1 Western person on the general board. So that way we have 2 Eastern. That way, that way it's still 50-50 representation between East and West at the EDC.
But that would not be, that would be a decision made internally,
Yeah, that
not
would
with
be,
EDC.
but that's just, ideally, that's what I would like. But physical count, I don't want to change that number. I think 1 executive, 3 general board is fine.
Okay, so that'd be 4 members total. Okay. Any further discussion? If we are going to be seeking consensus, I assume what we're doing is seeking consensus to instruct the budget team to negotiate.
Yeah, consensus to instruct staff when, if the EDC puts in a request for funding, or if we seek out the EDC for funding, that it's communicated. We'll communicate to them too, but that way they know what the expectation is when they put in the request.
Okay. For my part, and I don't want to get into a huge debate over it because I think I know where this is going to go, but I would not be in favor of that particular proposition. But, we will see what other commissioners have, and we will see what the results are with those negotiations with EDC. Okay. Any further discussion? If there is none, I would go to Commissioner Withington. Is his discussion item to have any closing remarks before we end discussion?
Yeah, no, I don't have any closing remarks. I know this body has discussed it for a long time, and, I know that that was what the will of this commission was, and I just want to make sure staff had that for the 2024 season, so we're not going into July like we did this year.
Okay. I'll go around and just, head nods will do, although probably be better since we're doing audio recordings. Is that the consensus of the commission? Commissioner Lawson?
Oh, the only thing I'm thinking is.
Oh, you want me to go ahead and put your mic on?
Oh, I apologize. That's, okay.
There you go.
Okay. No, I think that that's fine. I feel that talking to them face to face is much better than trying to go through, somebody else. And this way, there was so much back and forth last time. I think this is going to be great. We just go sit down with them, get their feelings. We give them our feelings and come back and then share with everybody.
Okay. Commissioner, oh, I'm sorry, let me push your button there. There you go.
There you go. Thank you. No, my position is along the lines of Commissioner Lawson. And I will say, I do understand the reason for the request. I also understand the position of the presiding commissioner in this. But that also suggests why bringing this up early and discussing this and putting it out there and getting reaction and getting alternatives, if that is a direction they wish to present, makes some sense. You know, there's nothing urgent because we don't have something in front of us, so I think now is the time to throw those things out there and see where they go. So, thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter?
I'm good with the change.
I'm sorry?
I'm good with the requested change.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't get your button pushed, that's why I couldn't hear you, but I think you were heard well enough. Commissioner Thompson?
I'm also fine with that. Yes, thank you.
And then Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well, though I wouldn't want to limit the EDC. We could also give them the other option of, like we gave them last time, is say we keep the presiding commissioner and an additional body added to the EDC. So one of those three that are on the general board could move to the EDC position or to the executive position. It's just an option that give it to them. Hey, which would you prefer? And I'm fine either way.
Okay. And as I said, I am not in favor of this particular position, so I guess we have while a split, but a consensus reached by the commission.
And just for the commission's information, so we've had some preliminary budget meetings with all the outside agencies from the budget team perspective. We are working to schedule our outside agencies that are requesting funding from the commission to actually come and present to you all in October. So at the early onset of the budget, because I don't present the budget to you officially until the middle of November, but we're, in October, we've kind of, we're making the sausage and the budget's kind of almost done. But we thought that would be an opportunity for them to come to you all, like they did last year, and present their information about their organizations and their proposed utilization and request of the funds from the county. And so when you're looking at timing from that perspective, we're really talking about sometime towards the end of October that the agencies would be here.
And by the way, I appreciate the clarification because I was assuming that it was going to be, the ask was going to be for 2 seats on the executive board. So I appreciate you clarifying what your thoughts were.
I know Commissioner Johnson threw that out there as a, just now as a possibility, but, I know that would take probably more of a change on their part. So I think just us having a say in who that executive board member is probably the place to start. So.
Okay, if there's no further comment, we will conclude that discussion item. Seeing none, that brings us to administrator comments. Administrator?
Yes, just for information, the next meeting of the commission is next Thursday, August 31st at 6 p.m. here in the chambers.
Okay. Commissioner comments. We'll start with Commissioner Johnson, if you don't mind. Commissioner Thompson. No comments. Mr. Carpenter, Commissioner Wagner. Oh, let me go ahead and...
Thank you.
There you are.
I should have made this as when we were on 2023 Ordinance 21, but I do want to recognize our colleague, Commissioner Lawson, because it was she who brought this to us before, and fought handily to get us to this point today. And now, under the guise of be careful what you wish for, she will now get to spend the next 3 months talking about this. But I do want to recognize her tenacity and desire to put this forward. So congratulations. Thank you.
Commissioner Lawson.
Thank you very much. That's kind of you. I appreciate it. So often women get no knowledge, no recognition at all. So very nice of you.
Well, ask my wife. I recognize her constantly.
Sure, you got to. The only thing I wanted to ask our illustrious administrator, where have we set a time to open those bids for the airport?
Right, I'd be happy to you're talking about the fixed base operator?
Yes, ma'am.
So the formal bids have been opened and have been reviewed by our 3 panel and rated. That's just one piece of the process. And so once all those ratings come in, and I'm not sure our third individual, our outside member, has submitted their scoring sheet. Once that is done, then interviews will be set up to bring in both of the bidders and do presentations. And we know that you're interested in attending that, and so as soon as those get set, we'll certainly send you an email.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Withington. Okay. I'll make one comment. I'll make it rather brief. Last week, I was not here, of course. I was in Washington. I was signing something that we had been working on here as a commission for some time, and that was some formal paperwork relating to We Care and the movement to get some health care assistance to those who are in the Army Reserves. Those documents have been signed. And once we get the documents back from the Capitol, then I will present them to the commission, and we can have any discussion and maybe get some update on when that would be implemented. I want to say that it was great because of the fact that Clay County is a pilot program in this. The fact that we are taking the lead in this particular area, I think, is something that is a credit to our county, and I think we should make sure our citizens understand that we are able to move forward on this particular issue. With that, if there are no further commissioner comments,